Hello artists, welcome to your spring wreath class. In front of you, you should have your canvas, long ways like so, a cup of water, a large brush, a small brush, a paper towel. For your colors, be sure that you have your pink, your coral, which is kind of like an orangish pink mix, mustardy yellow, your purple, your brown, dark green, light green, and your white. You do not have to pour your paints out onto your wax paper. It is a good place to mix colors on. So later on, if you wanted to use your wax paper to mix colors on, you absolutely can. If you do not have all those materials, not a problem. Just push pause on our video and come back to us whenever you are ready. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is take our two brushes, dip them in our cup of water, swirl them nice and round, and gently pat them onto our paper towel. And again, our canvas is long ways like so. So we're going to make sure when we start our pink and white background that we have a nice long canvas. All right, you are going to grab your large brush, and I want you to go ahead and dip your large brush into that dark pink. So large brush, dark pink. And I'm going to have you make some lines going up and down like so. About 10 of them. You can have some a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. Just go ahead and start with 10 lines going up and down. I continue on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. Once you're done, you can pour some white out onto your wax paper so your pink and your white don't mix. But I'm just gonna dip my dirty big brush into my white paint. And I'm gonna make 10 more lines with white. You can go back to more paint if you need to. It's okay if the pink and the white touch, not a problem. Excuse me. So 10 lines of pink, 10 lines of white going up and down. So it's just kind of a good place to start for our background. We want to make sure there's a good amount of coverage to start off with. Once you're done with your 10 lines of pink, 10 lines of white, you don't have to clean your big brush. Just dip into your cup of water. Pat some onto your paper towel and go over your pink and white from top to bottom. I kind of sweep too, which means I flick my brush at the end of my brush stroke, so I just kind of let go. You can always go back to more water, tap it on the paper towel so it's not too wet. Go from top to bottom, smoothing everything out. And that water will help smooth your paint, it will help move your paint, it'll help your pink and white work together a little bit more too. You don't want to get rid of the lines. You still want to kind of see those streaky lines in there. You can go back to water, your paper towel, and then to your canvas. You want to make sure all the front part of your canvas is filled with either pink or white. You don't want to see the canvas poking through. From top to bottom, like so. So this is kind of like a good base to start with for our background. Before we build everything on top, we want to make sure our background is nice and done. We'll even paint our 4 sides in a moment. But if you want your background to be darker, go back to more pink. You don't even have to clean your brush. You can go back to more pink and create more lines. If you want your background to be lighter, you can add more white. Our original is kind of like a medium, so we have a good amount of pink and a good amount of white. And again, I'm just kind of flicking back and forth. So our background isn't too light. It's not like a light bubblegum pink. It's definitely a little bit of both. So you can still see those darker pink areas still in there a little bit. You can see some white, some light pink. And if you feel like they're blending too much, if the pink and white are working together too much and you want to lay some pink or white on top, just give it a couple minutes to dry, and then you can start layering on top so it doesn't keep moving along and blending with the other wet colors. Once you're done, you can start kind of doing the same thing to the left side, the right side, the bottom, and the top. So I'm going to go ahead and add some lines of pink. Again, if you want to pour some white on your plate so it doesn't mix with your pink, you can. Pour some pink on your plate so it doesn't mix with your white. So I'm just going in there making some up and down lines on the left side. Adding some water to my big brush, tapping it on the paper towel. Just going over it and smoothing it out. Back to more pink, adding some more lines going up and down. Adding some white, and then adding water. So pink, white, add water. Get it nice and smooth, no bumps with your paint. They'll take forever to dry. So we want a nice smooth background. The bottom part, I'm just going to be going up and down to kind of continue the formation of those long lines, those vertical lines. Just kind of making, it's kind of like stripes going up and down. So pink, white, add water, tap it on your paper towel, go over it. You know, make sure all the background is nice and covered before we build our wreath on top. Some lines going up and down, adding some white. Again, it's okay if the pink and the white touch, water. And take your time, no rush on this step. You can always push pause on the video too. Get everything nice and covered. So all four sides are painted. Again, if you wanted to go back and make the front part darker, you've now given it a couple minutes, you can always go back to your pink. If you wanted to make it darker, you can always go back to your white, and again, just kind of sweep in those up and down movements. So you get those kind of feathery ends. It's a little bit thinner at the ends of the brush stroke. Again, be sure you're just going up and down. And once you get it to a point that you like, go ahead and push pause on the video. We're going to come back in a couple minutes while we let it dry. If you have a hair dryer, you can use your hair dryer to get the background dried a little bit faster. But we're going to definitely want to make sure everything in the background is nice and dry. And you can go ahead and wash and dry your big brush. Take your time, go back and forth as much as you like. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we're back for the second part. The second part does include our small brush and our brown paint. So small brush and brown paint. We're going to make a circle for our wreath to sit on. I want to kind of hit this mark for my top point and this part for my bottom point, so I have enough room to build the word spring on. And when you make your circle, don't worry about it being perfect because we're going to build so much on top of it. Just worry about it being a good size so you can build your florals and your greeneries on top and have enough space in the middle to write the word spring. Again, be sure that your background is nice and dry so it doesn't look shiny, so none of the colors we build on top mix on top of it. Also remember, with your small brush, the harder you push, the thicker the lines become. So as you're making your lines for your branches, be sure that you're just on the tippy toes so your lines are not too thick. So I'm going to show you how, and you're welcome to jump in whenever you're ready. And of course, you're welcome to push pause whenever you are a little bit behind and need some time to catch up. So small brush, brown paint. I'm gonna come down thicker than a ruler's width, so about right here. I'll make a dot. And I'll use my fingers, or you can use your brush to measure from the bottom. Make a dot about the same space. I'll use that measurement over here, kind of on the between these two. Make a dot right here. Again, you can use your brush to measure. You can use your fingers to measure. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, I'm gonna come here, make sure it lines up with the other dot. I'm gonna do the best I can to kind of make those 4 dots pretty even all the way around. I'm gonna go back to my small brush and my brown paint. I'm gonna connect them using a curvy line. So I'm gonna go from this middle left one, barely pushing on my brush, meet up the best I can with that one. Same over here from this dot. I'm gonna kind of over here to that side. From here to here. And from here to here. Again, mine is obviously not a perfect circle, but I do know that I have enough room to build the word spring, build my flowers and my greenery out. Go over to kind of smooth it out if you need to. Just like so. Perfect. It's okay, get a little blotch right there, but not a big deal at all. I'm going to be building so much on top of it that it will not be a big deal. All right. Once I'm done, I'm going to start making some branches coming out. And I'm going to start kind of like in a clockwise motion. I'll start up here, make some branches going out, some coming in. We'll go all the way around. So this is where the 12 o'clock would be. I'm going to come a little bit down and barely pushing on my brush. I'm going to come down and just with a little bit of a wiggle, maybe come out about that much. You can even just kind of sweep at the end so you get those thinner lines, but I'm barely coming out. Do not come out too far because we still want some space around our wreath with pink and white showing. Now I'm going to come inside the circle, same idea. It's almost like I'm pointing down with a little bit of a wiggle and just kind of sweep at the end. So a little bit of space between each one. And I'll come out again, a little bit of a wiggle and a little bit of a sweep. It's all like they're pointing in that clockwise motion. We're going this way, all the way around. Same amount of space, coming inside the wreath now. I'm pointing that way with my line. Not going too far out, I'm still pretty close to my circle. Coming out again with a little bit of space, pretty close to where the 6 o'clock is, where the 6 on the clock would be. I'm just kind of alternating in and out of that circle. So a little bit of wiggle and sweep. Keep moving all the way around. And it doesn't have to be exactly like mine, but just kind of have that idea of in and out of the circle. It looks like probably need to end right here, so I'm going inside my circle, so the next one will be out of my circle shape. Take your time with these. You can always go back and make the brown a little bit darker if you want your branches to be a little bit darker. This is a very soft painting. You don't really have to do 2 coats of any color unless you want it to be a little bit brighter. And once you're done, you can go ahead and wash and dry your brush. And again, I would give my circle and my branches some time to dry. And if you don't like a certain area or a certain branch, we're building on top of it so much anyways. So don't feel like it has to be perfect at this point, and you can always go back and add branches in there later on to fill up the space a little bit better if you need to. Once you're done, we are gonna, again, have a nice clean small brush, so wash and dry it. We're gonna go back to that same dark pink that we used in our background, and we're gonna be making our bigger pink flowers. They're definitely bigger than a quarter size, so you wanna build out a good amount. And we're gonna be going all the way around our wreath with this flower shape. And it's the same idea over and over again. So I'll be making several of them, so you'll see that, that step repeated. Again, be sure your brown is nice and dry. Small brush, dark pink. This is the 12 o'clock, so the top of my wreath. I'm gonna go a little bit to the left. For our big flower shape, they're roses. So I'm gonna be going round and round with my brush to kind of show the shape of each petal. And they're each kind of like individual petals, almost like a comma or parentheses shape. And I'll be getting bigger and bigger with my flower. Remember, again, they're bigger than a quarter size. There's a little bit of space between them because I'll be going in there with white in just a moment. You can come in and on top of your wreath, if your wreath is nice and dry. And you want to make sure these lines are nice and curvy. My brown paint is still a little bit wet, so that's why I'm wiping it off on my paper towel, but be sure yours is nice and dry. So again, just little curvy movements showing each little petal. A little bit bigger than a quarter size. So a little bit curved left, kind of like a C or backward C shape as well. Keep moving that brush. You don't want it to be in the same spot. Once you're done, you do not have to wash your brush. You can pour some white out onto your wax paper if you already have some on there. You can just dip your small brush into the white paint, so now it has pink, that dark pink and that white on it. I'm going to be going into those empty little spots and just kind of keeping that same idea of the comma shape, the backward C shape, and going round and round. And be sure your brown is nice and dry. And you're constantly moving your brush. If your white isn't bright enough, you can always let it dry and go back and give it a second coat. If your pink is not dark enough, or if you want it to show a little bit more, go back and give it a second coat as well. You can even add a little bit of yellow in the middle. You don't even have to clean your brush. You can just go to that mustardy yellow. And more in the middle, I'm going to do a C, backwards C shape, like so. And once you're done, you can wash and dry your brush. And that same idea, we're going to do over and over again with our roses. I'm going to make another one here to the right. So if you wanted to watch the example again, you can. So a small brush, that pink paint. If you want your pink to be a little bit lighter, you can always mix a lighter pink as well. I'm going to be on the outside of my wreath again. I'm going to start with those C, backward C shapes. Keep moving that brush. Don't be in the same area. You want to show each petal kind of on its own. A little bit bigger than a quarter size. Move all the way around. So you just kind of have that basic shape of the rose. have some shorter curves, some longer curves. Once you're done, you can dip into the white without having to clean your brush. If you get too much on there, you can always just tap some off. And I'm going to fill in those areas. And it's okay if the pink and white touch, they're kind of working together anyways. Just be sure that you always have your brush moving. You're not in the same area. You just want to show each individual petal. And I don't even clean my brush. I just go into the mustard yellow. Just gonna go C, backwards C shape a little bit in the center. And I clean my brush. You could do all the pink and then all the white and then all the yellow if you wanted to as well, or just one flower at a time. It's absolutely up to you, whatever works best. If you are doing one flower at a time, just be sure you're washing your brush between each, between each flower, yes. So after you're done with a flower, wash and dry, and then you can move on to the next one. Go into my pink again. I'm gonna build a little bit more on top of my wreath this time, and then at the top and in the middle. So right, keep that brush moving. Again, if you wanted to make a lighter pink by mixing some pink and white together on your wax paper and then building your roses, you can. So I did all my pink, went to my white. Just gonna continue those motions. If you ever feel like you have too much paint on there, just wipe it off on your paper towel or your paper plate. And make another flower down here, kind of the outer area. Continue on all the way around. If you wanted to see an example of the pink and white, let me show you an example of a lighter rose. So I'm going to take a scoop of pink and a scoop of white, mix it. I definitely want it to pop from the background, so maybe I'll just put a little bit more pink in there so it's a little bit darker than the background. And if you want it to be lighter, add more white. If you want it to be darker, add more pink. This is again with my small brush. You can wipe off the sides once you're done mixing. And make a flower, maybe around here, going inside. Oop, still can't see it. Add some more pink to it. Don't make it bigger than a quarter size. Again, just always remember that you're going to write the word spring in there too, so you don't want to really overlap too much in the center. Add some white to my brush. That brush moving. I'll do another lighter one. I'm going to go on the outside this time a little bit more. some of that lighter pink inside these ones too. So that darker and medium and a light one. If you wanted to add some of that mix in your other ones too, you can. Add some white. Just gonna go back and forth and just have that same idea in mind. Over and over again. And you can always go back and touch it up too. If you are just doing one coat for your flowers, it's going to give it more of like a watercolor feel to where it's a thinner paint. But if you want to go in there and add another coat, after it dries, you can go back on top of it. It's going to pop a little bit more, so you'll be able to see your colors a little bit more. But that's absolutely up to you. You can kind of go back and forth as you need. Just again, be sure you're making those kind of comma shapes moving, or it'll kind of become more of a blob. You won't be able to see the shape of your petals as much, and it won't make sense as much for the shape of your flowers. If you feel like you got to a blob stage, you can always let it dry and go back over it again to kind of get the shape back. Just give it a couple minutes to dry, and then you can build on top of it again. And don't forget the yellow in the centers after you're done with your pink and your white. I'm gonna make one up here. I'm gonna make one between these two because of all the space. I'm just kind of planing it out. I'm gonna have this one more on, let's see, kind of sitting on top of my branches right here. So I'm gonna go in there and make those curvy shapes again, starting from the inside, going out. Adding white to my brush. Going in there and filling in those spots between it. And filling the center with yellow. Again, you can always go back and touch things up. If you want to smooth out any area, make your pink and white work together a little bit better, you can always add a little bit of water to your brush. Just remember, water helps move your paint, helps smooth out your paint, and it helps your paint blend together. Your paints blend together a little bit better, so they work together a little bit better. I'm gonna add a little bit of this pink mix here and there on mine too. So I have darker petals with medium pink petals and my white working together nicely. And if you lost that shape too, again, you can go back and kind of get those curvy lines. You can add some to the outside too, so it can look nice and full all the way around. But work at this step for a while, get it exactly how you want it. If you want to go bigger with your flowers, you can work on the outside shape too. So if you feel like your flowers are too small, you can always go back and build on the outside of them a little bit more. Just kind of create those curvy shapes. And take your time with these, and once you're done, you can go ahead and wash and dry your small brush. We'll be jumping into that really pretty coral color, that peaches color next. And it's the same idea with our coral flowers that we'll build in just a moment. It'll just be our coral and our white. We won't be making a mustardy yellow center. All right, take your time with this step, but once you're done, you can go ahead and wash and dry your brush. And this is my small brush I'm using for my coral flowers, and I'm gonna go in there with just my coral at first, and I'll add white in just a moment. All right, and I'm adding them a little bit here and there between my fun kind of rose shapes. And it's that same idea too. I'm making a lot of curvy lines. These are going to be a little bit smaller, so just be sure that you're making smaller flowers, little fillers. So I'm going to start up here. So here's my 12 o'clock. I'm going to go a little bit to the right. I'm going to go and make those kind of parentheses, so little curvy areas. And then I don't even have to wash my brush. I'll just go into the white. You can pour some white on your wax paper if you don't want it to mix in the containers. I'm going to move my brush in a nice curvy motion. If you want to make a lighter coral in there too, remember you can always mix some onto your paper, your wax paper. Get a nice light coral as well. I'll use this light coral here, and I'm going to do the same idea between this one and this one, maybe a little bit closer to this flower. Just going to make those dashes round and round. You can add a little bit of white here and there. I'm going to show the light hitting. You don't have to be exactly in the center between those two. You can have some closer to your flower. You can add one between these two. I think I'm going to skip the space between these two, but if you want to cover up any area, you can. But I'm going to put a flower right here. I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm just going to go to the coral. Go round and round. Remember, they're smaller than the rose shapes we just made. Add a little bit of white. Tap some on my paper towel so I don't have too much. Just go there and just add a little bit of white on. Again, you can go back to your lighter coral mix. You can go back to your coral. I might skip a space between these two right here as well. And I'll go back to my coral. I'll make a flower between these two. So this is kind of where my 9 o'clock is. Come down a little bit. Round and round. Add a little bit of white. And if you need to have it as another filler, you can. We are going to be going there with leaves and 2 other flowers, one a mustardy yellow and one a lavender color. So don't feel like it has to be super full. And then we have all of our greenery too that we're going to do. And once you're done with all those coral flowers, again, you can add as much as you want. Go ahead and wash and dry your brush. If you need to push pause on the video, you can. But the next flower we're going to make is going to be with our mustardy yellow. This flower shape is going to be a little bit different. It's almost like a V shape, and I'll show you on my wax paper. So I'm going to go in there and make a V shape with a little bit of a curve. And then I'm going to go down the middle with a line. So you'll get that shape over and over again. You can fill them out a little bit more. So you have that shape, your flowers. All right, I'll make one, and you'll add a little bit of white as well. So we'll start with a V shape, and you can turn your canvas as you're going, because they'll be facing this way too. All those mustard yellow flowers will look like they're pointing in this direction. So I'm gonna make one over here next to this pink flower, and I'll just be making kind of like an upside down V shape. And I'll be going between the two with a line. You can get a little bit curvier and filling it in. This yellow is hard to see. If you want, you can let it dry and go back to a second coat. I'm gonna add a little bit of white to my brush. Maybe tap some on your paper towel. Just gonna sweep a little bit of white here and there. It gives it another way of kind of popping. Swipe off your brush. I'm gonna make another one over here. So a little bit of yellow. Again, I'm going in a clockwise motion. My flower is pointing this way. I'm gonna make an upside down V, maybe under this flower. You can even do a practice run if you want to get a good feel for this shape. Go between the two. Fill it in a little bit more. And then without cleaning your small brush, if you wanted to go back to a little bit of white, tap some off and add some little bit of lighter areas. And again, you can still see some of the brown underneath it. If you wanted to go back, you can give that another coat. Make another one right here. Wipe off my brush a little bit of yellow. Make one behind this one, again pointing towards the 12, so a V shape. Going between those two lines. Just pushing down with my brush. You can add a little bit of white. Tip some off and closer to the bottom area, add some white. Then I'm going to make another one right here, overlapping over this flower just a little bit. A little bit of yellow. It's pointing towards the 12, so I'm going to make that V shape. Kind of push down on your brush in the middle. And then white. Adding some bits of light. Then I'm going to go further up here between this one and make another yellow flower. I'm just kind of pushing down in that V shape. Making a line in the middle. Get the V shape back. And if they're getting lost, if those yellow flowers are getting lost, go back and give it another coat. You can wash and dry your brush. And take your time with those flowers. While we're letting those flowers dry, we are going to go in there with our greenery. You have your dark green and your light green, and then we're also going to use white. We'll start from our darks, go to our light green, and then our white paint. Our leaf shapes a lot of times are in a shape kind of like a football shape where they're thinner on the ends, but let me show you how. And again, they're kind of going in a clockwise motion to where they're pointing like they're going towards the 12. You will have some little bit here and there going the opposite direction. I would definitely do a practice run of a leaf shape on my paper towel or your wax paper, but let's go ahead and start. Again, be very aware of any wet colors, so Be sure your flowers are nice and dry before you get any of your greens or white next to them. So small brush again, I'm using my small brush. I'll start here where the 12 o'clock is, and I'm again moving my leaves in that direction. I'm gonna go out from the rows. I'm gonna come up a little bit. Again, these are kind of like football shapes. And then I'll come down and meet where I started from. An eye shape or a football shape is kind of a good way to describe it. And the ends, you can always dip down and out. It's a little bit softer. And then go ahead and paint the whole thing with that dark green. Another way you can make a leaf, again, be sure to have like the ends a little bit thinner. This is just, I can start from this one and just kind of come down. A little bit of a slide and out. And make the bottom part a little bit thicker. And you can do a practice run of that. So I started with that other leaf, dipped down almost like a slide, and then just made underneath it a little bit thicker and came to a nice point. You can also add greenery by just pushing down on the side of your small brush. So if you wanted to, you can add some little lines here and there. So, but then just kind of going in there and filling it in, making sure the ends were nice and pointy, like so. I'll show you that again in slow motion. Give me just a moment. So again, I can push down, and I'm just going in there and finding any really big areas where there's a lot of brown peeking through. I'm gonna, again, go in this motion, point towards the 12, pushing down, and then I'm gonna go in there and just gonna bring it to a nice point. To a nice point. Again, come down this way, pointing. I can just bring it to a nice point. And later on too, you can go in there and cover it up with flowers if you don't like it, cover it up with dots, because we'll be making dots too. Go in there and just kind of push down. There's a lot of greenery on this, so you definitely want to make sure you have a good amount of greenery, and you're trying to cover up a lot of the brown branches as well. Make another one over here. I'll go around this yellow flower. And I like that football shape we started out. Then we can fill it in. Make another one, that slide shape. I can go underneath it and bring it to a nice point. Can push down with my brush. Just gonna fill it in a little bit. And it's nice and full, so you can always go back and add more greenery. I'm gonna continue around. Go around some of my flowers. I'm gonna start out a little bit further, slide down, bring it back in, then paint in all the space. And again, you can do 2 coats of this darker green if you want, and we're going from dark to light. Maybe go up a little bit in this space. Leave some of these visible, some of these branches that kind of came out. We'll be putting some flowers on top of them, or you can go back and add more if you need to. So I'm just kind of avoiding some of those areas that kind of branched out from our circle. all the way around. See the side of my brush. Make sure you have a nice amount of small, medium, big leaves. I'm going in there and filling in these spots. A little bit here and there. And you can always go back and kind of find some areas that might need a little bit more greenery. Or again, you can go back and add another coat. A lot of times you have two that come together. So I'm going to make this kind of football shape, and then I'll come out and make another one, getting out the other way. Just going all the way around with my dark green. You can always go back and give them a second coat once they're a little bit more dry if you want a little bit more of a solid dark green. Yours does not have to be exactly like mine, just think about those shapes and be sure you have a good amount of greenery. You have some coming inside the circle, some more on the outside. All the way around, like so. Give your dark green a minute or two to dry. And start where you started with your dark green, but in just a moment, without cleaning my brush, I'm going to go in there and add little sweeps of that lighter green on top, just randomly here and there, just kind of sweeping a little bit of green. You still want it to mostly be showing that dark green. Then we'll also go back without cleaning our brush and add some white. So I have my green. Give it a couple minutes to dry. I'm going to go in there with my light green. I'll start where I started from the top, just a little bit. You can pat some off onto your paper towel. And you're just kind of sweeping mostly on the outer kind of edges. It does not have to be on all of the leaves that you made. I like to tap some off on my paper towel because it's just a little bit. And again, remember, the harder you push, the thicker the line becomes. And I'm also moving with the curvy shape of the leaf. So light green, tap some on my paper towel, mostly on the outside kind of area. I'm going to add a little bit of this light green here and there on my leaf shapes. So light green, tap it on my paper towel, and then add some sweeps where I'm just kind of flicking with my brush and start in and out that leaf shape. And at any point, you can always go back and add more flowers. You can add more leaves. Just kind of make it yours. Don't feel like it has to be perfect the first time around. Especially at the end too, once you kind of take a step back and look at the whole thing, there's always time to add more flowers or leaves if you need to. And we'll be doing the same thing again with our white. We'll give our light green and our dark green a couple minutes to dry. And then we'll be adding some white paint, again, mostly on the outside kind of edges of our outside kind of curvy area of our leaf shape. If it's blending, if it's getting mixed or blended with the dark green too much, let your dark green dry for a little bit longer so then you can build this light green on top a little bit more. Then once you're done, you don't have to clean your brush. Same old, same old. You can find a nice clean area of white. Maybe tap some on your paper towel so you don't have too much on there. You can sweep some on top of your light green. You can do some on top of your dark green. If you have too much on there, just wipe it off. You can go back to more white. And if you don't like the way that it looks, you can always let it dry and build your greens on top again. Or you can use your water, pat it off on your paper towel, and just kind of go over your white to smooth it out a little bit so it does blend in with your greens a little bit better. So white, tap some on my paper towel. I can work mostly on the outside edges. You don't have to have them on every single one. If you're finding like they're not blending too well with your other greens, just add water, tap on your paper towel, and just kind of go over your white. Just smooth it out. If your white is blending in too much, let it dry, and then you can go back over it to make your white a little bit brighter. Again, you can go back and forth to this as many times as you want. We went from dark green to light green to white. Whenever you're done, you can wash and dry your small brush. And if you're still working on this, take your time, no rush. But we're going to keep with our small brush. Again, you're welcome to pause the video, but I'm going to go on to our next step. Be very aware of any wet colors. If there are any shiny wet colors, do your best to kind of avoid them because we're going to be using our purple and white. You can truly have both colors. So you can have purple and then add some white, which is your tint. It's going to make your color a little bit lighter. So I just kind of dip into purple, white. You can pour them out onto your wax paper if you want so they don't mix in the containers. So a little bit purple, a little bit white. And again, I like to tap some off on my paper towel. You can do a practice run too before you make it official. My purple dots are going to be mostly where those branches kind of peek out. And all I do is push with my brush down, and there's going to be some going up and to the left and then up and to the right. So it's almost like it's breaking out into a Y. So you have your main branch and you have one going this way and one going this way with purple and white. Let me show you what that kind of looks like. It sounds kind of weird, but all I'm doing is, again, purple and white on my small brush. You can do a practice run. I'm going to go up that way, and then I'll go up the other way. See how it kind of has that Y shape or that V shape that we kind of did earlier with this flower? And they can be kind of scattered too. They don't have to be right by each other touching. You can kind of go off to the side. And again, the harder you push on the side of your small brush, the bigger those dots become. I like to put one at the end too. So I'll kind of find those branchy areas, but I can add them anywhere, truly, as nice fillers and spots that are kind of still open. So purple and white. Let's see, this is another good one, and it's going in the direction of all the other flowers. So that way and that way, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, and then one at the top. And you don't have to get purple and white every time if you have a good amount on there. But a little bit goes a long way. So a little bit left, a little bit right, a little bit left. You can overlap over your leaves and your branches. We have a lot of colors working with our whites. Again, to kind of show the depth, so show some that are getting hit by light as well. So it really helps with adding some white to our florals and our greeneries. Here's another one right here. It's kind of poking through. So I'm going to go this way. I'm going to overlap over this leaf. I'm going to go back and forth. Overlap over the rows a little bit. And then I'll make one on top. This one's kind of peeking through too. And I go this way. Push down on my small brush on the side. Overlap over this leaf. We have one at the end. Again, all going in that clockwise motion. More purple and white. See this one kind of peeking through. Go, kind of push down. Add a little bit more purple. Let's say I wanted to kind of fill up this space a little bit more. I can add a brown branch if I wanted to, and then go over it with my purple and white dots, but be sure you don't go too far out. Remember, we still have a lot of pink and white showing through on the outside of our wreath. It's nice to see some kind of overlap as well. If you wanted to, you can just kind of create little spaces as well, just a little bit here and there. Even do little shapes like the V shapes. Slowly start filling it. So you can just add some, kind of like that mustardy yellow shape we had earlier. You can have some going towards the 12, some going against the 12 o'clock. Slowly we're going to start filling in all this space. And again, this I just did the V shape, how we did before, and then just kind of went down the middle to kind of cover up more of the brown branches that were peeking through. You can go back and do the same thing with your pink and white mix, coral, but again, slowly you want to fill up all that spot, all those branches. And just kind of make it your own. You can go back and touch anything up. We're also going to put some dots on our wreath, layered on top. Be sure everything else is nice and dry. We're going to use the back of our small brush because the back of our small brush has that perfect circle, and we just be dipping it into our white and then pushing down on it and just creating little clusters, like clusters of like 3 to 6 dots. The harder you push on the back of your small brush, the bigger the dots become. So you want to have it kind of scattered and kind of like a combination of bigger dots with smaller dots. And then I wiped off the back of my small brush and made some mustardy yellow dots too. Take your time with your purple and white, but I'm going to show you how to make the dots whenever you're ready. So again, be sure it's nice and full. You can go back and add more flowers before you do this next step. Just push pause on the video. But the back of my small brush, I'll find a nice clean area of white. You can do a practice run if you want. You can have some overlaying, maybe a little bit on the outside, but don't go too far out from your wreath. Just doing little clusters. And do all the way. Be sure that you have everything else behind your dots is nice and dry. Again, it's a good way to kind of fill up some spaces. I did about 3 to 6 dots. I'm just kind of moving all the way around, finding some empty spots, and also knowing that I'm going to go in there with my mustardy yellow in just a bit. And do it the same thing. You can overlap over the flowers. cover up some more of the branch areas. Just kind of pushing down on it like a stamp, creating these really fun dots. Let's say you did mess up on your dots, just let it dry and you can build a leaf on top of it and then build more dots on top, or a flower and build more dots on top. Just be sure that they're nice and dry before you build anything on top. All right, once you're done, you can wipe off the back of your small brush. And then just like before, but in our mustard yellow, find more spots that would be good fillers. Just push down. You can overlap over your leaves. Come inside of the wreath area a little bit on the outside. Just gonna make it work with your wreath shape. Again, 3 to 6 dots, a good little cluster. I'm going between my white dots to kind of create a pattern. It doesn't have to be perfect. Kind of have them very random. And take your time with these dots, but for our next step, we will be writing the word spring. If you wanted to, you could grab a pencil because we'll be going over with white paint, and the white paint will just cover up the pencil. So if you feel iffy about your handwriting, you can grab a pencil and start out writing spring with pencil first before you go on top of it with white and white it out. I'm gonna let my wreath dry for a couple minutes because I don't want to accidentally run my hands through it while I am painting the word spring on top. So again, take your time with your flowers, go back and forth and fill it up as much as you need. And I will be back in a couple minutes to show you how to write the word spring. And I'll see you in a bit. And again, grab a pencil if you need to. All right, the last part of our spring wreath painting is writing the word spring in the middle. If you have a pencil, again, you can use your pencil to write it in there first, and then when we go in there with our white paint, it'll just white it out. And you might have to do several coats of white, giving it a couple minutes to dry between each coat, so it kind of layers on top and gets to a brighter white each time. If you are just going to go in there without writing it with pencil first, I do what I call like an imaginary run through, where I just kind of get a good feel of where I want my lettering to be. So I kind of figure out exactly how I want to go in there and write it, and just make sure that I get a good feel for where each letter should lie. You are going to just use your small brush, and again, be sure that just to remember that the harder you push with your small brush, the thicker the lines become. I like to dip my small brush into my cup of water, squeeze it and kind of bring it to a nice point so it works like a pencil. Hold it where the metal or the gold or silver part of your brush is, and a little bit goes a long way. So we're just going to start out with just a little bit of white paint, and when I kind of be right here in the middle, you could work it down a little bit lower if you want your lettering a little bit lower. I'm just going to go for it. So I'm going to do my S. Again, lightly pushing on my brush. Come down a little bit lower and do the P. So the S is the only capital letter. Maybe a little bit more. The R. The I. The N. And then the G. And the G can kind of go around my leaf shape too. That looks kind of cute. So kind of bringing it down a good amount of space. And then I can go back and give it another coat now that I have it laid down, because I definitely want it to be brighter so you can see it much, much better. And giving it a couple minutes to dry between each coat. Nice long movements with your brush. Keep it going. You can always add a little bit of water, tap on the paper towel, bring it to a nice point if you lost the pointiness of your brush shape. You can even start from the outer edges and work your way in. Just be sure you have nice, smooth, long movements with your brush. When you work from the outside in, you can push down on your brush a little bit and then bring it in so you have those nice kind of rounded ends to your brush stroke. So I'll show you again on this one. So if I start with just pushing down that nice kind of outer edge. And if you are left-handed, just be very careful. Just always be aware of not touching anything that's wet so you're not smearing. You can even use your pinky to kind of sit on. You can use your elbow a little bit more. So you can kind of rely on resting your elbow on your table. Bringing in those edges to kind of clean them up. But take your time, get your letters how you want them. If you are not happy with your handwriting or if something kind of got off course a little bit, you could let the white dry a little bit and then work on top of it, make some more pink and white lines. Let that dry and then do your lettering again. It's just kind of tricky. So let's say I smeared a little bit, I can let it dry, I can go back with my small brush, make some more pink and white lines going up and down. You can use water to kind of help them blend together a little bit better. Let that dry and then go back to your lettering. So you can build the background a little bit again and then build your lettering on top of it. Using that water to help it blend will definitely make it look like it matches the background. And if you lost the point, you can always have it off to the side so it doesn't drip onto your painting, but bring it to a nice point and go back and get those lines nice and clean. But take your time, make your letters nice and neat. If you want to go back and do anything else to touch things up, you can. Just be aware of wet colors touching. But there is your beautiful spring wreath painting. I hope you guys had a great time. Thank you so much for joining us and enjoy those beautiful flowers outside. Have a great day.